Okay, the study session of the Aurora City Council for Monday, February 12, 2024. It's called to order. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mayor Coffin?
Here.
Councilmember Bergen? Here. Councilmember Coons?
Present.
Councilmember Gardner?
Here.
Councilmember Hancock?
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky? Here. Councilmember Lawson?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Mario? Present. Councilmember Sundberg?
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem Scott.
Okay, no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the consent calendar item number 2A to 2B forward? Seeing no objection, consent calendar item number 2A to 2B will move forward. Items from the policy committee, item number 3A. Pfizer legislative update. Councilmember Lawson. Is Liz here? Why don't we come back to that? Item number 3C, retail theft repeat offenders. Councilmember Drinsky.
Turn it over to Pete.
Thank you, Councilmember Durinsky. Pete Schultz, the Public Safety Client Manager for the City Attorney's Office, members of council, mayor. This was brought by Councilmember Durinsky to do two things this ordinance does. One is from last year where you all had ordained to have retail theft defined as $300 or more, reduces the threshold from $300 down to $100, and then adds a couple provisions for repeat offenders. So if evidence is presented that the defendant has previously been once convicted of retail theft or something similar, hi Liz, something similar, then it would be a minimum of 90 days in jail, with the first 3 days to be served at the Aurora Detention Facility. And there's two or more violations of that code, it would be 180 days. With the first 3 days to be served at the Aurora Detention Facility, and then the rest at the county jail.
Questions on item number 3C?
Mayor?
Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, just a couple questions on the data. Since we've dropped it to 300, do we have an idea of how many we've had to courts?
So I did, Councilmember Medina, I did ask APD to provide data, and this is what they provided me from the Havana Business Improvement District, the bid. Since 1/1 of 2023, Walgreens, which is at 10601 East Alameda's, had 29 shoplifting that with 300 or more. The 7-Eleven at Havana, 7 combined between the three 7-Elevens. It's a lot of stuff from 7-Eleven, right? $300 or more.
Yes.
King Soopers has only had 7 that they've reported. Havana Beauty Supply have had 5. PQH Wireless has had 5, and Old Navy has had 4. And they said out of the 99 reported shoplifts in this quarter, 85% were chain businesses. So Walgreens, King Soopers, Old Navy, and 15% were small local businesses like Hobbytown, Rocket Fizz, Fascinations, and Havana Beauty Supply.
But that's just from the Havana bid?
Correct, just the Havana bid.
We don't have them from the city as a whole?
Not from the city as a whole. I can get that information, but that was what I requested from Councilmember Medina's request.
Okay, very well. Further questions or comments? Councilmember Drinsky?
Speaks for itself, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Gardner.
Has the city attorney's office reviewed the letter that we received alleging that this is an equal protection violation?
Yes, sir, we have. I talked about this at Public Safety. I didn't get the ACLU letter because it didn't get directed to anybody from the city attorney's office. I'm glad that it was forwarded to us with some council members. They left out a very key component in that letter. They left out a home rule. So Article 20, Section 6 of the Colorado Constitution makes it very clear that we have our ability under home rule that if there's any conflict between our city ordinance and state law on items that aren't preempted, right? This is not a preemption area. But any items that aren't preempted, any issue there, city ordinance prevails. So there's no issue. The city attorney's office is strong in our foundation that if you all choose to pass this ordinance, we can defend it in court.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
So I had asked in public safety, and I understand the agenda probably came out the same day, but about the incarceration numbers for our current mandatory minimum in the city jail. And both of the county jails. I don't see that in the backup, so I was just wondering if that information is available.
So I will tell you that Court Administrator Candace Atkinson did provide some data after the fact. For Arapahoe County, it was the last time that we paid per evening or per night that somebody stayed in the county jail was back in 2014. I think some of you may have remembered before I came to Colorado full-time, there was some argument about whether or not cities should be paying for the bed space in the jails when we already pay taxes. And so we have 14 beds, is that correct, Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
14 beds in Arapahoe County that we can use for this purpose, and we're nowhere close to using those on a nightly basis. So that's already included. I don't know if Adams County is the same way, but we can look into that. But that was part of the information that we received, is that we are already paying for those 14 beds, and there is plenty to be used at any given moment.
Can I ask a
I
follow-up?
can add to that.
Okay.
To directly answer your question. In August, there was 3, but 2 were for more than 3 days, so they would have had to have been transported to Arapahoe to serve out their time regardless. In September, there was 1 that was a 3-day sentence that was transported to Arapahoe. In October, there was 1, but also had a warrant out of Arapahoe, so that's why they were transported to Arapahoe. In November, there was 1 that was transported to Arapahoe. During this time, there were 2 inmates that served in the municipal jail that we were able to safely house them, not included in the numbers above. So in total, we only transported 3 inmates to detention that could have served in our jail.
Okay, and just the
Please
follow-up,
proceed.
so you said just 2 served in our jail? Is that correct, or what's the total number of people that served on these 3-day mandatory minimums?
Well, so what I'm showing is 3 in August, but 2 were sentenced for more than 3 days, so they have to be transferred regardless.
Sorry, I just don't want you to have to repeat. My question is about in our jail, how many people didn't go to Arapahoe or Adams? How many people served these sentences in the Aurora detention facility?
It looks like 2.
2, just 2 the whole time since this has been implemented?
That's what it looks like if they have
Only since
warrants out of
August.
Arapahoe. Huh?
That was only, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The second floor where we house these inmates has only been closed since June, so all the other ones were served at our jail. So this is only since we have been transporting them when necessary since that date in June.
Do you have a number, Candace, that about how many people have served a 3-day sentence over?
That's what's in these numbers. Not since the beginning of,
Since the bill passed?
not since the bill passed.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I thought it was more concentrating on how many had to be transported, so I didn't look up that
So
number.
just to add to that, though, when you ask specifically about that, the answer is this would be a hard number to find for sure, as they don't specify the amount on summons. So we have no way of knowing which cases fall under the ordinance. So they're just serving for theft. It could be theft. It doesn't necessarily say, like, it's not being specified theft of the, 3-day retail ordinance. So that's not separated. If the police can run a report for those cases, then we can try to get it separated, who's actually serving for the 3 days on the retail theft ordinance versus who's serving for any other kind of theft.
I'm wondering, is there a way we can get that number?
I will, my understanding is, and since Candace is here, I'll let her speak.
Since the passage of the new ordinance, the ordinance that was $300 above.
We need to figure out a process where when the judge sentences somebody under this ordinance that is defined as retail theft, or the next ordinance under Dine and Dash, that we're able to pull those numbers out, because right now, both of those are getting looped into sections that are already in the code. So we got to figure out a process with court administration to be able to pull those numbers out. It's got to work with both the court, with Judge Day, and court administration to do that, but I think that's on your list. I don't want to speak for you, Candace, but about being able to get those numbers out so we can kind of know when they're getting sentenced under these ordinances.
I'm working with the police department to get a list of ones that were over 300 so I can compare it to our system, and then I'll have that number.
300 or more.
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
So when we passed these ordinances, there was written into it a requirement that there be folks that come together and assess the effectiveness and assess this data. And it was supposed to be a task force of different folks associated with the jail and the police department. So I'm confused, I guess, as to why we haven't done that at all, and now we're bringing back another ordinance related to this, but we haven't even reported on the data that was promised when this first passed. So to me, that's concerning. Like, the data should have been being collected, because we said it was going to, being reviewed and being reported. And certainly, we should do that before we start adding and piling onto it.
Further questions or comments? Councilmember Bergen.
I understand what you're saying about getting the data, but I don't think it changes the intent of the ordinance, because it's just, we have so much theft happening in our businesses that it's just adding protections. I mean, I get that we want more data, but I don't think it changes the ordinance, really.
Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Combs.
I think it changes the credibility of our decision-making as a body, whether or not we do what we say we're gonna do around providing data and tracking the effectiveness of our work. But I did want to also check, there are a few other things I had asked about. So one was to Court Administrator Atkinson about what is our current detention capacity in the jail?
Are you talking about to serve these sentences?
Yes, correct.
Currently, we're going to reopen that second floor on the 19th. And then when it is open, it's 12 males, 6 females. But if we don't have any females, then we can house males on both sides, if that makes any sense. So that's what that area current capacity is.
Well, what's the aggregate capacity with that? Because you got the first floor too.
Well, yeah, how much?
That's just processing, so we wouldn't be able to house anybody there.
Yeah, but how many can we house down there? I think, total capacity, it's more staffing that we can't have. But we try not to house them on the first floor if they're serving that 3-day sentence,
Okay.
because the requirements are a little bit different. They
Sure.
need to be out so many hours a day.
Further questions or comments? Is there any objection to moving 3C forward?
Mayor,
Okay.
object.
Seeing a majority have risen in support, then 3C will move forward. Item number 3B, Pfizer legislative update, Liz Rogers.
Hi everyone, deepest apologies for being late. Liz Rogers, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. With permission, I'd like to combine items 3A and 3B into one full report, if that makes sense for the council and the mayor.
Sure. Please proceed.
Okay, so the Pfizer committee met on January 19th and February 2nd and took positions on several bills. You can find these on pages 36, 40, and 122, 123 in your packet. For federal bills and all the subsequent bills, I'm going to read out the number and title and then take questions after. So for federal bills, we've supported House Resolution 6224, they're fast, we're furious. And then in state legislation, we've supported House Bill 24-1015 concerning suicide prevention education in the workplace, House Bill 1016 defined personnel for emergency telephone services, House Bill 1072 aggravated cruelty to law enforcement animals, 1076 Purple Star Program, Senate Bill 32 methods to increase the use of transit, Senate Bill 1 continue youth mental health services program, Senate Bill 52 ongoing funding for 911 resource center. The city has taken an amend position on Senate Bill 36, Vulnerable Road User Protection Enterprise, Senate Bill 65, Mobile Electronic Devices and Motor Vehicle Driving, and House Bill 1152, Accessory Dwelling Units. The committee changed position from amend to monitor for House Bill 1007 concerning residential occupancy limits. They took a monitor position on House Bill 1090, privacy protections for criminal justice records, and opposed positions for House Bill 1079, persons detained in jail on emergency containment, and House Bill 1114, pet animal facility requirements before euthanasia, and no position on House Bill 24-1098, cause required for eviction of residential tenants, and Senate Bill 94, safe housing for residential tenants.
questions for Liz Rogers, Councilmember Bergen?
Thank you, Liz. I have a question on House Bill 24-1007 on residential occupancy. So you guys changed from amend to monitor.
Correct.
Why would we not take a pose? I see it as a home rule authority type of situation. We currently allow 4 unrelated people to live in a house. So is this to increase that?
So the bill would address familiar relationships, and we do have Jessica Prosser here to speak a little bit more to that. However, the city saw an amendment to the bill that we would still be able to make changes and make health and safety codes provided in accordance with the International Building Code, which the city does follow, and also accordance with fire and safety codes, so adding those provisions.
Right, so I still think we should take an opposed position just because again, we should be making those decisions as our own jurisdiction, not mandated by the state that doesn't know our particulars in our different neighborhoods. This came under opposition by a lot of residents when it came through council a few years ago. To change it from 4 unrelated people to 6 unrelated people. And so I know we're going to, if we didn't take a strong position against this to show where we stand like we did with the land use bill last year, I don't think it's very, it doesn't define a very clear position for us that this is taking away our authority. I know we're going to have emails, people showing up at public invited against this because pretty much all of Ward 6 will be opposing it.
Okay.
So Jessica, could you just clarify what it actually is doing?
Yeah, so it's just taking out the familial relationship. So right now it can be 4 unrelated, and when we go to a home where we've had a complaint and we do an occupancy questionnaire with them, if the group says we're living as a family unit, then we take that as their word, because right now we say unless you're living as a family unit. So this could say that we take away the family unit piece and we put more restrictions on it to say number of people per bedroom, number of people based on plumbing fixtures, number of people based on parking availability with the home, a lot of different things that we could add in. So we still have that option to add all of those things and to be restrictive in a different way. So this is just saying that it's not based on your family relationship. So that's all that it's changing. And, sometimes having a lot of extended family living together or multiple families living together creates more people than you would have if you had, 6 unrelated people living together. So we still have the ability with this to make all of our own requirements and base them on health and safety, just not basing them on are you related to
Okay, so if it passes, we still have that
Yep,
authority?
we can still do lots of amendments to make it relevant.
Philosophically, it looks like a home rule issue that where we've been arguing, at least, the city's been arguing, particularly last legislative session, that it's not so much about whether or not we could live with the decision, it's we're giving up the
Right.
decision-making ability on a specific area. And so I would ask that to be considered.
And to that point, Mayor, we could do what Jessica just said ourselves. We
Right.
could put more restrictions in.
Right.
We don't need the state to tell us, how to do federal housing.
Mayor?
Yeah.
So just because if there are some, again, the Pfizer position can be overridden.
Sure.
We made our decision at the Pfizer. If it's what you want to choose to do to get the 6 votes to make the current change that you want to oppose, then you could bring that forward. And actually, we can do that right now, if that's what you want to do.
Yes.
And then that will be the position of the city.
Okay. Is there further discussion on this? I'm going to ask who is in opposition or for taking a position in opposition to the legislation on the basis of home rule.
Well, Mayor.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason to change our position. This doesn't allow, this wouldn't change our ability to place occupancy limits. All it does is say that we cannot make familial relationships a barrier to placing those limits in place. That's all that this does.
But I still think there's a home rule issue here in the sense that we're kind of surrendering our authority even on that one issue. And so it's not whether or not we can live with it, it's still the principle of it. Now, we cannot, under this, we cannot make a decision based on familial relationships. Councilmember Coombs.
Mayor, I think that, right, the point is that that's not really a justifiable reason to make that decision, right? There are all kinds of good building code and health and safety reasons to implement occupancy limits that our home rule authority is still going to allow us to implement. So retaining our home rule authority to make arbitrary decisions about family relationship, I think if we want to have a home rule conversation, that's not the hill I would die on.
Well, it's an erosion of home rule authority, and when you allow it to say, okay, it's okay to have an erosion on home rule authority, because I agree with what the state legislature is doing, weakens your position when you disagree with something that the legislature is doing. Councilmember Burton.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We can live with it, but I agree with the mayor. You're giving up home rule authority, even though it's not, we can make our own restrictions, so forth. It's just little by little, we continue to erode that home rule authority. And you know, we don't know what happens down the road where, oh, well, 10 times you've agreed with the state and home rule authority somehow gets diminished.
Yes, Alex is a precedent. Councilmember Gardner.
Well, using that logic, then we should be taking opposed position to almost every bill that the legislature brings forward, because almost every bill that the legislature brings forward has an impact to Aurora, and most of them have unfunded mandates and other requirements on the city, and so we should be taking an opposed position to almost every piece of legislation that comes forward if we're going to use the home rule argument.
You know, but I think it would be helpful to read the state's constitution as to what jurisdiction the state has and what jurisdictions home rule municipalities have. Further questions or comments? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, maybe if we could not take a position today, or do we need more time to consider this?
We didn't take a position. We took a monitor position.
We took a monitor position.
I know, I was suggesting an opposed position.
Well, Councilmember Lawson.
I mean, this is a fast-paced thing going on at the legislature. So if this is what the majority of council wants to do, to take another position, I would recommend you do that right now.
Councilmember
So is
Johnson.
that what you're recommending? Do you want us to?
I would recommend an opposed.
Okay, those in opposition to an opposed position, please.
Mayor, I object.
Object.
It's a weird way
Councilmember Zavani's not here. Well, then it's 5-5, so it dies at a 5-5.
I mean, Mayor, Liz, where are we at in this bill?
So it did pass the House on a party line vote of 44 and 20 against, and it does look like it has legs to move in the Senate.
Okay, I was thinking that in 2 weeks, we don't know where things are going to be on this bill. So I guess we can see where it is if council wants to, again, see what Councilmember Zavonic is at, take another vote on it to see. It's moving fast, though.
Can we then delay it till the next study session?
If you would like.
Okay, very well. Well, it'll be, yes. Okay, then we'll delay making a decision until, well, let me ask you, is there objection to delaying, continuing this until the next study session?
Mayor, I object to it because it's moving fast. And I'm sorry Councilmember Zavonic is not here, but, then we're going to take another position. So I just have issues with it all the way around. I object to it. So
You object to continuing?
I object to continuing.
Okay, all those who object to continuing.
Yeah, I don't think
till
that
the
makes
next.
sense. And Pfizer can amend.
Yeah, we can amend and do it at the Pfizer meeting.
Well, but I guess the question, so if it's
we
at
might
the
have
5-5, then it really does, nothing moves forward, right?
Correct, and so it falls, so in this particular case, it doesn't move forward to change what's already been done by Pfizer.
Okay.
Pfizer, again, meets more often than council currently, so Pfizer can reconsider this under their procedures.
Okay,
I have
very
one more question.
well. Councilmember Berger.
So, under amend, if it moved forward from the House, you said, or the committee?
Correct. It was voted on the House and passed through the House
passed
and
through.
is now in the Senate.
And you said we could still have an opportunity to give input?
It just depends on, yes. And
And
I
what-
don't know when it's scheduled.
Okay.
I mean, Liz, I kind of depend on Liz. I try to.
So if we wanted to add a provision or something, we would be able to do that?
Yes.
Well, Liz, I mean, it takes a long time for a bill to get through the entire process. And so we would have certainly you can bring it up.
You want to come to the Pfizer meeting on Friday? You can.
Well, you wouldn't have a vote, though.
No.
You're not a member of the committee. But I think that, let me just say that I'm going to take a position for the monitor to give me the ability to bring it up again. I guess it's kind of a de facto vote of reconsideration, right? Okay, so I'll bring it up in the next study session. Okay.
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
And I would just remind council, as Councilmember Lawson and I have talked about quite a few times, that if people individually feel strongly and want to speak against, go testify or communicate with legislators in a different position than what council holds, that's always an option for folks to do.
Sure. And let me just say, I don't want to belabor this point, but things become precedents. And so when you say, okay, I don't object to the state doing this on home rule, but now I object to doing this, I think constitutionally weaken your position. Are there any other issues for the Pfizer committee that we need to go over?
I don't have anything else on my list if council does not have any other questions.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I have one.
Oh, Councilmember Murray.
On the ADU, can you just clarify the
The committee took an amended position.
amended position?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So what do we have here? Item number 3D, amending sections pertaining to mandatory minimum sentences for theft of services. Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, thank you. First, something that you said, Councilmember Coombs, I just want to go back to it because I never remembered saying that we were going to put together a task force. So I asked Pete to specifically look up that language. Can you please read section 3?
Yes, ma'am. Pete Schulte, City Attorney's Office, Public Safety Client Manager. The City Council will evaluate the effectiveness of Section 1, which is what put in the minimum mandatory sentence of this ordinance, and formally act to extend it on 2 years from the date of passage. So, or the provisions of Section 1 of this ordinance shall expire. So that's what I know that Julie Heckman, the deputy over criminal on our side, with Candace are working on, because that 2-year period is coming up this summer on both the motor vehicle theft and the retail theft ordinance. So that's when Mayor asked about those numbers, we didn't have those because we're preparing for that when you guys as a council decide the effectiveness of them.
Mayor.
Please.
I think I was misremembering. It was the overall approach to public safety, the resolution that was passed just before this, that was supposed to have a task force, which as far as I know, also hasn't met. So we're still not collecting and reporting the data on any of these issues and any of these approaches that we said we would.
Further questions or comments, Councilmember Stumber?
That conversation.
Yeah.
Putting a task force together is pretty specialized, and it's going to require a council member to really put that together, isn't it? So I don't remember that conversation. You can refresh my memory.
I can look it up. I don't remember the exact language, but I know that it was supposed to be consisting of the chief judge, the court administrator, the police chief, and maybe the prosecutor. I don't remember
But you don't see that in the
that
ordinance?
third person was. But it was in there. We had legislation wherein such a group was supposed to convene to report to us on the efficacy of policies that we were passing. I know because I asked if our chief public defender could be included and was told no.
Mayor, the only thing that I think that maybe must be the Public Safety Action Plan. Was that the one that Mayor Pro Tem Zavonic? So every month at Public Safety, Jason and I do present those 5 areas that were required by the resolution. I mean, Mr. Batchelor, I don't know, do you remember anything beyond that? That's all I remember from that resolution, which we do every month at Public Safety.
I'll have to go back and reread the resolution. It's typically, there's 5 areas. It is staffing, crime stats,
Mental health.
mental health, homeless, and then youth violence. Those are the 5 areas that we report on each month.
I'll pull it up at some point and send it out to folks. I know that was part of it.
Okay, further questions or comments?
Mayor?
You want me to
Councilmember Murillo?
Yeah, can you introduce this ordinance?
Yeah, so this particular ordinance would, I'm sorry.
I mean, Councilmember Murillo has the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. I actually just wanted to clarify, so we'll have a report to your last statement in June related to the data, and we're saying that we don't have data that can be attributed to that ordinance.
That's what they're working on, Councilmember Murillo. Again, that's outside of my work that they're doing, but in preparation of the 2 years of the retail theft is November.
Right.
The 2 years of the motor vehicle theft is August. So we are, as staff, is preparing to get that for council ready to go, probably at Public Safety in April, to talk about removing that restriction, right? Removing the sunset provision of those 2 ordinances. As I'm thinking, as I'm doing this now, as we're presenting the new retail theft ordinance, we're changing that. I think it would probably be appropriate to put that in this ordinance as well, since we're adding something to that retail theft ordinance by removing the sunset provision. But that's obviously the prerogative of council. If you wanted to address this as it is and then do the sunset provisions towards the end of the year, because that expires in November, but we have to manage those 2 conflicting statements. If we're going to go and amend the retail theft ordinance like we just discussed, then should we remove the sunset provision now or wait till November?
Thanks.
Councilmember Jernsky.
Can we introduce the ordinance, please?
Yes, ma'am. So what this ordinance does, Councilmember Jurinsky wanted to add what's called a dine and dash provision to the city code. So what this does is adds another section to the general penalty section of the code, where it says for those theft offenses involving, quote, defrauding a public establishment, end quote, which again is already a code section in our code, pursuant to the AMC 94-74 subsection D, where the total amount due under the agreement is $15 or more, a mandatory minimum jail sentence of 3 days shall be imposed in addition to any other sentence imposed by the court. Court shall not set aside or suspend the minimum sentence with the 3 days to be served at the Aurora detention facility. So this says any defrauding a public establishment would be walking a tab at a restaurant, $15 or more. So again, this would be something that for the court administrator and for the chief of criminal prosecution for our office is that we would have to define those in our system somehow to be able to track those moving forward.
Okay. Discussion.
Mayor?
Councilmember Jernsky.
Yeah, I'd actually like to make one change to the wording, and I guess this goes for the retail theft, where it says, will be served at our municipal jail. Ms. Cadiz brought up a beautiful point at the Public Safety Committee that folks are actually scared to serve their time at the county jail, and they think our jail is a walk in the park. So I would like the language to be changed, will be served at place most appropriate, or however you want to word it, but ship them to county, I don't care.
So in response to that, again, we'll have to work with Sheriff Brown to make sure, because that was the agreement that we had.
14 beds.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll set that up at the meeting and we'll talk about making that change.
Further discussion. Is there a
Sorry.
requirement that, I mean, so we can hold for 72 hours?
That is a limitation by state law in our detention facility, yes, sir.
Okay.
Camp. No homework.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Councilmember Combs.
So I had asked, I know there was some question about whether or not this data is available, but about current cases for defrauding a public establishment in our court.
So I did talk, and I'll let Chief Morris jump in here if she'd like to, but we did talk about, we were having a difficult time getting businesses, just like retail theft before, they weren't reporting to the police. Chief Morris has made the same comment to me that we don't have a lot this is defrauding the establishment because these cases are hard to prove, right? Unless you stop the person on the way out, you know, by the person who's the homeowner or the business owner or not, it's hard to prosecute. So a lot of places that involve the police. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
Okay,
And then to that point, since it came up at Public Safety, we did reach out to the Havana Business Improvement District. This is not something that they're tracking. They didn't have numbers either. They did point me to the Business Advisory Board. The Business Advisory Board had a couple of different crime forums across the city where this had come up, so I was able to reach out to the chair of the BAB. He did advise that this is something that they'd heard from a number of businesses at those crime forums, but they also don't have numbers. But and I guess he also said if you would like, the BAB is happy to advise you council, but they were waiting for direction from council to see if you wanted them to weigh in.
Mayor.
Councilmember Drewski.
Which I did speak to Chance Horiuchi, and they absolutely want to take a position on both of these. And as just a reminder, and I said in the public safety meeting on Thursday, this very much comes from these crime forums off of the Havana bid meetings.
Let me just say, if you want to, we need to make a decision, the council as a whole, if you want to change the language to reflect that, what was the language again?
Well, because right now it says, Mayor, it says the mandatory minimum 3 days must be held at our.
Must be served at the
Must be
Aurora
served at
detention
the Aurora detention facility, meaning we couldn't ship them to county. But on some of these cases where they have warrants out of the county or the judges, that's just a mandatory minimum. The judges, there's judges that are sentencing them to more than just 3 days, then they're getting shipped anyways. So I just want the ability to say, to served at, you know, either our municipal jail or county jail.
We could actually, Mayor and Councilmember Drewski, just take out with the 3 days that we serve at the Aurora detention facility, just end it at, cannot set aside or suspend the minimum sentence, period. And then it's up to the court administrator of the detention facility where it gets served.
Okay.
We can do that. And again, then it leaves it, we're not putting anything in the ordinance that points back at the sheriff, or anything like that. I think that would be more appropriate than adding, you know, that it not be done at the city jail or the county jail, city detention facility.
I just know that there is an overcrowding issue in Arapahoe County, even though we have some beds reserved. And so if in fact, now obviously if there's warrants for the county, they're going to serve for the county, but that that it may be problematic. I mean, if we're placing people in the county just because we think that it's tougher, as opposed to on the municipal, I'd be concerned about, I think a judge would be less likely to do a sentence that would be longer if in fact it contributed to that overcrowding, if they weren't going to be in our detention facility at all. But I think with the language that you mentioned, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Councilmember Bergen.
Just a question on the 72-hour, you said that's by state statute.
Yes, ma'am.
So in this situation where county jails are full and don't have room, so there's no way to extend the 72 hours due to overcrowding at a county jail?
Not under the current statute, because if we wanted to have the ability to hold somebody for longer than 72 hours, there's a lot more parameters we'd have to instill in the detention facility, which would take a lot longer than, you know, a day to get up to speed. It would take quite a bit to be able to get that to be done that way.
Okay. Okay, could you restate what that language would be?
So what it would be is, it would be on both the retail theft ordinance that we just discussed, instead of the very last sentence, it says the court shall not set aside or suspend the minimum sentence, period. It's going to strike with the 3 days that we served at the Aurora detention facility.
Okay, because, I mean, it could be that we're overcrowded here,
Right.
and then we need, so is there objection to that language? Seeing none, then that's the direction.
All right, I'll make the edits if that's what, moving forward, okay?
Okay. Let's see, so, seeing no further business before study session for the Aurora City Council, the meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6:30 in regular meeting.